Welcome back to the Anglotopia podcast. This is our second podcast in the new series, and thank you for all the kind words after we published the last episode, and everyone was very happy to see us back. We had such nice comments on our YouTube channel and
very popular
on our Facebook. So we're very excited to resume the podcast, and we have lots of exciting topics to talk about. We have lots of exciting guests who will be coming on the podcast in the next few weeks, and it's going to be a lovely celebration of all things British going forward, as it always has been. And we hope that you'll come along and listen. And this week, we thought we'd start with something a little fun. We thought we'd talk about British children's literature that we read when we were growing up, that influenced us, that influenced me with Anglotopia, and also the British media that our own children have consumed as they've grown up, and how things have changed. And we'll talk about our favorites. You can see we have some of them on the table. If you're watching on the video, we have our table is staged with lots of Britishy books. And so part of the reboot of the podcast is we will be doing tea when we have our discussions, and so we'll talk about this week's tea as we get ready to talk about British children's literature. So do you want to pour?
Yeah, I can pour.
So this tea is my fourth favorite tea. And it's the house blend of Christ Church College at Oxford. It's not called Christ Church College. I know someone's going to correct me in the comments. It's just called Christ Church. And when I did a summer course a couple years ago, this is the tea that they serve in the Great Hall for breakfast every day. And so it's their own custom house blend from Twist Tea. And I just loved it when I was there. And so before I left, I was sure to buy it. They sell it in the Christ Church gift shop. And ever since, when I run out, you can only get it from the Christ Church gift shop. So you have to import it to the U.S. from them, and it's a lovely, flavorful blend. And I'm excited to drink it today because I haven't had it in a while. So that's today's tea blend.
Oh, I guess it's kind of fitting, right, that we're having a tea from Oxford.
Yeah,
so much literature.
Yeah, some of the people we'll be talking about had an influence on Oxford, and for the record, this is not sugar. I'm not piling the sugar into my tea.
People commented.
Yeah, that's not sugar. It is a 0-calorie sweetener that I buy on Amazon, and it's I'll put a link in the show notes. It's stevia, monk fruit, and a mixture of a bunch of things. That it's like the closest approximation I could find to sugar that's completely artificial and has 0 calories, because I'm on a diet. So I have to watch my sugar intake, and I was, when I drink 3 or 4 cups of tea a day, that's a lot of sugar. And I love having sugar in my tea, which some people would not approve of, but I'm sorry, I like it sweet. So
no sugar in my tea, thank you.
So I will put the link to this sugar in the show notes, because it actually tastes really good. It's of all the artificial sweeteners I've come across, this tastes like actual sugar. So, all right, well, let's dive right in. I thought we would start with, what is the first British story, or your favorite British story, that you remember from being a child, and tell us all about it.
Okay. So my very most favorite story of all time is The Velveteen Rabbit. My mom read it to me when I was really small, and I absolutely, hands down, through my entire childhood, that was my favorite story. And I had a stuffed animal growing up, and the premise of that story is there's a child who loves a velveteen rabbit enough that eventually the rabbit becomes alive. And I can't remember. It's been a really long time. I know that the girl or the boy in the book gets scarlet fever. I can't remember if the child survives or doesn't survive, but I know that the rabbit does, and through the child's love, the rabbit becomes a real rabbit. And like the end of the book, like the rabbit's like bouncing out in the garden. And so growing up as a child, I had a stuffed animal, and this stuffed animal, my mom used to tell me, like, if you love it enough, it will, because it's very, very small. And so, which was absolutely lovely. And I think it's a great metaphor for life, though, as an adult. Like, when I look back at it, I don't think that was probably the original intention of the book. I think it's a lovely story, but that if you love something enough and you pursue it enough, that you can essentially make it happen. I don't think you can make, like, a stuffed animal come alive, but if you're pursuing your goals, I think you can make it.
Like Anglotopia.
Yeah, exactly.
We made happen.
You love your goal enough that you make it happen.
Did you know that I had a Velveteen Rabbit?
Of course you did.
And it was my lovely. And I loved the story as well when I was a kid. My mom probably still has it somewhere.
Probably.
Knowing her.
So sweet. So sweet. But our daughter actually had a rabbit that I bought for her at Harrods for her that first Christmas she spent in England, remember?
Yeah, Jellycat.
We found this, like, Jellycat brand rabbit.
And that was her rabbit.
For Brown Bunny. That was Brown Bunny.
We had a backup Brown Bunny. And we bought many more bunnies too.
Yeah, lots and lots of bunnies. But anyway, so maybe, I don't know, maybe that had an influence on.
Yeah. So my formative British childhood media was the works of Roald Dahl. And I was exposed to it at school. I believe in 3rd grade in Mrs. Barnum's 3rd grade class. And she read, during story time, she read us Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And which kids,
it's a chocolate factory.
Kids love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I mean, it's one of the most iconic children's stories there is. And then but she didn't stop there. After that, then we read James the Giant Peach, Matilda, and so, like, I didn't know it, in 3rd grade, but I was being exposed to these very, very British stories.
Yes.
And, and to add more cloud to it, like, when the movie for Matilda came out, like, they stripped the Britishness out of it. So I always thought it felt like an American story. And now looking back, like, we've got the role, like, you can't throw off camera, but I can actually.
We've got. I actually went and found your copy.
Yeah.
Some of the things.
So when you got pregnant, we bought the set of all the books at Costco.
Yeah, you're gonna have to, like, pick that up for those who are watching on camera.
Yeah. So this is
a big old box.
Yeah, it's a box set from Costco that had all the books. I was like, oh, sweet, I'll get them all at once for our kids, and they never read them.
Did you know my 4th grade teacher, actually, Mrs. Kacharsky?
Name drop.
You can tell we're definitely outside of Chicago. Read Matilda to us in 4th grade, and it was like a treat at the end of the day. Like, I don't know, it felt like a half hour, but it was probably like 10 minutes where she'd just read a chapter. And then that was the school year, right? Like, the Matilda movie came out that summer, but then we did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and we did a bunch of the Roald Dahl books, and they were so great. Like, that is such a great age for those books.
Yeah, I know Roald Dahl as a person has kind of fallen out of fashion because he was a notoriously not nice man, but his stories have been so timeless, and he built such rich worlds within each book that are just so imaginative.
They're so geared for children.
And so geared for children because they're filled with horrible people. They're filled with horrible situations that children just love.
Well, the children are the heroes of those books.
Right. Yeah. And
in a world of grown-ups that always get it right, the children...
In a world of childhood trauma, these children usually,
Yeah. I mean, in a Roald Dahl book, that's completely fair.
And 2 of my favorite Roald Dahl books were his autobiographies. These were a big influence on me, and I actually wrote about these.
So if you're not watching,
so it's Boy, Tales of Childhood, and Going Solo, which is the thrilling sequel to Boy as it's billed on the cover. And Boy is his childhood memories of growing up in the Welsh countryside, as his mother was, I believe, Norwegian, so he also spent a lot of time in Norway as a child. and then going solo was when he was a grown up and he was an RAF pilot, and like super exciting stuff when you're 11 years old. I remember being at the family lake cottage as a child, and this is like the only thing I did the entire weekend was read this book. And it's looking back, there's a lot in this that like became some of my personality traits.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've never read that one.
Like, the love of British airplanes and the love of the British history and British military and World War II and all that. Like, very formative book for me. And I loved the stories of Roald Dahl. And then it's a shame that I couldn't really get the kids into them.
You never know.
Never know.
There's still time.
There's still time.
But those were the formative books for us. And so, but there are, like, as we were discussing this as a topic for the podcast, we kept going like, oh, and what about, and then there's this, and then like, and it became really clear to both of us how much of British literature and British literature that started as literature and then became cartoons and that kind of thing, and how much that it's been exported globally.
Yeah.
And it's not just beloved here in the US, but it's beloved worldwide. And like things like Paddington Bear and Winnie the Pooh and
Beatrix Potter,
like those are completely global now. Like you can go to just about any spot on the globe, and chances are somebody's going to know at least one of the three.
And Paddington was huge before the movies.
I remember the books.
Yeah, I remember the Paddington books.
I had to have a Paddington coat, actually.
I remember when you came to England for the first time with me.
Yeah.
In 2004. And we stepped off the Heathrow Express at Paddington Station and walked out onto the street. You're like, this looks like Paddington Bear. This looks like the storybook.
It looks like the illustrations.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
You like London? I like you too.
It looks like it did. It looked like a children's book, see, because, right, I had been kind of drip-fed this very
drip-fed Britishness.
Yeah, but that's
what it is. Yeah.
So, like, I had to have I desperately wanted a wool coat with toggles, and
You have one now. You have the duffel coat with the toggles.
See, it's quite a few years.
We got it in Cornwall.
I can't even say how many years it took me to get there, but, and your mom actually brought me back a Paddington Bear, remember? Like, a really nice one. It's somewhere, and it's packed away nicely, I know that. But it was like a really, like, but the quality was really good.
I think we got it from the Paddington store before the movies. There used to be a Paddington store in Paddington Station. There might still be. I'm not completely sure.
There one in Covent Garden?
I haven't been there in a while. No, that's where the Beatrix Potter store was, which is not there anymore either.
But also just to speak to how popular
tourists are looking for these things when they travel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like, I mean, you can't swing a cat for how many Harry Potter stores there are now.
Oh my gosh.
But we'll get to Harry Potter in a little bit.
Yeah. So let's like throw out some, because we made it this huge list, and we won't talk about everyone on this.
Yeah.
And we apologize in advance if we're not talking about your favorite. There are so many, like, and as we started to do research for this podcast, I was like, there's like this.
We could talk for hours about this, but let's try to keep it to 45 minutes.
So we're going to talk about the things that
influenced us and that we remember,
and then we shared with our children.
And then please share in the comment thread on Anglotopia or on YouTube. Please share your favorites, and on the Facebook page as well. Your favorite childhood. We would love to have a conversation going, because this is a two-way conversation.
Absolutely.
Before we start naming off franchises, which is feels like such a coarse word,
beloved
childhood memories. I want to recommend this book. It's called The Great British Dream Factory by Dominic Sandbrook, and it is a cultural history of Britain's exported culture around the world, and talks about how Britishness is infused within world culture. They also made a companion documentary series about it, but I don't think it's available in the US. But you can probably find it on YouTube. I'll put links in the show notes. But it's a Dominic Sandbrook. He's an excellent cultural historian and knows his stuff about these things. And he goes back to the roots of a lot of the stuff that is behind a lot of this beloved stuff that you wouldn't even think. So highly recommend The Great British Dream Factory. And I'll put that over here and stop fanboying about Dominic Sandbrook. Yeah, it's my favorite podcast. The rest is history. So
podcast crush completely.
Yeah. So why don't you go first? Name something you remember from being a child.
Let me see, because we've got a pretty big list here. I'm just checking our show notes. Let's see. Let's talk about Beatrix Potter.
I never really read her much as a child. What about you?
Peter Cottontail, and I'm good, thank you. And the Tale of the Flopsy Bunnies, and Mr. McGuire's Garden, that one we read. And then when we did, I feel like we did different British books for our kids. We did Beatrix Potter for our daughter, but I don't remember reading them to our son. But we started to collect them every time we went. I would find them. You are a freak. Whoever is listening to you.
It's part of the atmosphere we're creating here.
Sorry about the tea you're trying to point at. But what's crazy is, our kids are getting a little older, and they've definitely made that shift from little kids into being they're definitely older kids and moving beyond that. And so I think it was last summer, I switched out the bookshelf, and I oh, I know I was a mess because I read to our kids every single night. But we read so many of those Beatrix Potter books to our daughter, but we read other really great books to our son that were a little more geared towards his interests.
Yeah, he loved tractors.
Yeah.
And cars and trains.
But we did
construction equipment.
We did a lot of the Oliver Jeffries books.
Yeah, which you have
one.
Yeah, those
here.
Those when you're a parent and you have to read to your kid at night, sometimes it feels like a chore and sometimes it's a joy to do. And some nights when you're reading a story you really dislike over and over again,
or it's
I know. Yeah, I know, I really don't want to read the Polar Express again. But
trains, Dad.
But the Oliver Jeffries books are a joy to read every single time. I think I love those books more than our kids love those books.
Yeah, you read.
I had a set. Yeah, and when we would travel, we would find all the new ones because he's British, so they would come out in England first, so we would get them when we traveled.
They are very Roald Dahl-esque.
Roald.
Sorry, it's American. I always say Ronald, and I know that's wrong. But they very much have the spirit of very imaginative. There's one, remember the one with the boy, there's one with the penguin, right? Where he goes to the North Pole and gets a penguin. They're really sweet books.
Yeah. Yeah. They're very out there, but also they're sweet.
They're imaginative.
And they're imaginative.
They're so imaginative.
And I believe some of his stories have been adapted into animations on Apple TV.
Oh, that makes sense.
So you can see them animated. Our kids had grown out of Oliver Jeffries by the time they made them.
Speaking of animated, the Fox, what was it that we watched over Christmas?
Oh, the boy, the horse, and it's a fox, right?
Yeah, I think
so. I have the book somewhere.
Yeah, that's British, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's if you haven't seen that one on
Apple TV.
Get a box of tissue.
Yeah, you're
I can't eat it. It will completely wreck you, but in a good shape.
Yeah.
So another British one, but super recent, right? Just continuing that tradition. So what was another one?
Paddington Bear.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Paddington Bear.
And then Winnie the Pooh.
And
now
famous bears.
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh is a hard one because a lot of the Winnie the Pooh that American children are exposed to is the Disney Winnie the Pooh,
right?
Which is which has almost nothing to do with the original Winnie the Pooh, other than
Which
named
it is the
settings.
sweetest, the original
And
by
so,
Milne.
yeah, so if you can get the original A.A. Milne books, they're triumphs of children's literature.
Well, do you remember when I found out I was pregnant? I found
We had a set.
well, I found a book. It was called like When We Were Young, and it fits. And I apologize, I have a knowledge gap here. It fits somewhere in that. I think it's a collection of poems, and I found it at a secondhand book sale in Shaftesbury, like a charity sale when we were still. I don't even know if I think we got engaged on that trip.
Yeah, we were probably still in college.
And the illustrations in it were so beautiful. They were like watercolor. And when I found out I was pregnant, I made I painted watercolor prints of them for his room, and we still have them.
Yeah, downstairs.
Yeah, they're so sweet, so sweet.
As a boy, a big part of my childhood was Arthurian legends, King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table and
Guinevere
and all that. I ate all that stuff up. What about you?
so much. I mean, I knew of it, but it wasn't, and I don't know. I think I kind of more fell into that Disney version of princes and princesses. I mean, like, and like, my childhood was in the late 80s, 90s. So, this was back when Disney was kind of cranking out their films. And so, like, the concept of princess and princess and all of that really, like, the British literature, although some of it comes from there, it didn't. My idea of princes and princesses was really kind of Disney-fied. So
yeah, Disney was a big part of my childhood too. I had the Disney Channel growing up, so I was spoiled growing up. A cable, the Disney Channel.
We had very different childhoods.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Peter Pan.
I remember again Disney-fied.
Oh,
what were you saying about
that for at least for our generation, coming up in the 90s, Hook was our Peter Pan.
Hook was huge.
And that is a very, like, I consider that like a fusion of the British bits and then like the fun American bits. Like,
yes.
You could think of the British parts of the movie where he's still in London, like the British bits, and then like the Neverland is like the manic American part of the movie.
Well,
he's
British,
right?
The kids are American,
right? And so it's like a hybrid,
and they play baseball.
Yeah,
remember they play baseball, and he's like, "Your dad never attended your games." And I remember as a kid being like, "Yeah," and now as an adult, I'm like, "Hey, buddy, his dad is working really hard.
It's hard to get to all those games."
But no, I think you were so right, and it's Julia Roberts is Tink, right?
Yeah, it's Tinkerbell.
Tinkerbell.
And what's weird though is like film critics like hate that movie. A lot of people won't put that on their best lists of the 90s, but like a lot of regular people like us, like we love Hook. Like Hook is beloved in amongst our generation because everyone knows Rufio and
that's not in
in
the original, right? Like again. Right, whereas the first place I saw Peter Pan was the Disney animated film, right? And then later Hook. So we don't know the actual real, like.
And then you got the John Williams score. It's classic.
It's so good.
But then you try to watch it now, though, and you're like, this does feel a little overwrought.
It's for children.
But it's for children. But as a kid, I loved it, especially at the end when they have the battle of all the vegetables and paint and all that. Like, it's so colorful. Like,
what about Toodles and Finding Your Toodles or music? Are just so sweet. It's so sweet.
But then when you do read Peter Pan, there are so many elements in the movie that are in Peter Pan that they've just turned on its head or made more interesting. And it's I've not really enjoyed other versions of Peter Pan since the way I've always liked Hook.
Well, I think it's a fun kind of glimpse into 90s culture, right? Before they go to Neverland.
Yeah.
But he's got a cell phone and just
Well, it was so glamorous going on the airplane to go to London, and it's like,
Yeah,
ooh.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And Robin Williams is in that, and he's
yeah,
so good in that.
he is. He's the perfect character for
Yeah,
that
just really
because he can do serious and then childish.
well, and he was like a one-man show all by himself. Like,
Yeah.
he just turned on the camera.
Well, and in that movie, you feel like Robin Williams' shtick is very suppressed until it's released in Neverland.
And then it's
whoo. I like Hook. We should watch Hook this weekend.
It's next on our list.
I was going to say The Indian in the Cupboard. That was read to me in school. I don't remember what grade, but I remember it takes place in London. It's a British boy who wants his little action figures in his cupboard to come alive, and they do. And I remember being very disappointed by the movie, though. I haven't seen the movie in 30 years, but I always liked that one.
The six.
Well, it's the big elephants in the room.
Big elephant.
Two of which you're not a huge fan of. I guess we'll talk about Harry Potter first. So the Harry Potter, we grew up when the Harry Potter books were coming out, and we both had.
Hold on, grew up or like we're at the tail end of childhood?
Well, we were. I mean,
we're not like kids.
I was like 13 when they started coming out. I mean, they started coming out in '97.
Oh, okay.
So we were coming up when the Harry Potter phenomenon was happening, where it was like the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And
okay.
we both had two very different Harry Potter experiences because I love the books. I got them at Barnes & Noble in Maryville, I remember, and the old Barnes & Noble. And
we had one of our first dates there.
Yep. And it's not there anymore.
Nope.
How things change. And, I burned through the books, the first ones that had already, I think by the time I started reading them, the first three were out. I burned through those in like a month. Like, I was like, I'm a fan. I'm enthralled. And then I was there. I went to the opening night, midnight opening nights for pretty much every Harry Potter book subsequently, except for the last one, which by then I was a grown up and could order it online and have it delivered the same day of release day.
I think we were dating, and like one of the Harry Potter books came out. And you were like, we weren't engaged, but we were dating, like actively dating. And you were like, I'm just unavailable for the next 48 hours. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? You were like, I have to read the whole book before somebody spoils it for me.
And I think, honestly, I think that's the one that was ruined for me.
Oh,
ruin it for our audience. I have trauma of a famous death in the Half-Blood Prince.
Seriously,
just
use the word.
I have literary trauma.
Oh my.
And because back in those days, I worked for my father's business, cleaning carpets and cleaning commercial premises. And we were in somebody's house cleaning their house, and they had gotten the book. The kids in that house had gotten the book at midnight and stayed up from midnight until 10 a.m. when I was there working to read the whole book. And they shouted out, "I can't believe it!" And I was like, "Really? I'm not that fast of a reader." I was so upset.
You actually were really.
I was really mad. But then, Harry Potter had a life of its own, though, when it comes to the movies. I actually like the movies more than the books, and I haven't read the books since they came out. I've watched the movies dozens of times, and that's actually heresy to real Potterheads that you like the movies more, but it's the vibe of the movies that I love, and how imaginative they are, and how all-encompassing they are, and they tell the story completely from beginning to end. And even now, every year, every Labor Day weekend, I try and do a rewatch of all the movies, which annoys her because she's not a fan of the movies.
Well,
that's a good segue
into kind of why.
Yeah, you grew up very different.
I did. So my parents, and I just want to say that I am not making a commentary on religion of any way, shape, or form, just blanket statement. My parents were very religious at that point in my childhood. very conservative religion, and so for them, Harry Potter was wizardry and was, demonic and like all of the like. As an adult, I feel very differently about it, but at that time, Harry Potter was absolutely not allowed in my house. Like, we didn't do the books, we didn't do films, like, it was, like, that was scorched earth, like, that was just a hard no. But, which brings us to our next, which would be C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
So, C.S. Lewis, in that very conservative, religious, setting, C.S. Lewis was seen as absolutely okay to read and encouraged. And so Chronicles of Narnia, like I've read just about all of C.S. Lewis. Now, granted, it's been like quite a long time, so like trying to jog my memory, but they were really, again, just beautifully imaginative books, and like separating the religion from all of that, from this conversation, because I don't want to go into that. Standing on their own as works of children's literature, they are just so unique, and so that's I did a lot of C.S. Lewis. So
Yeah, I didn't.
See, you did Harry Potter.
Yeah, I did Harry Potter, and yeah, I was very snobby about the people who refused to read Harry Potter. Like, oh.
I just couldn't. I tried. I mean, even after we started dating, like
you'll watch the movies, but you don't love them like I do.
Well, I didn't have that relationship with the story, with the characters like you did, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I grew up, they were formative for me.
Well, they even did the Chronicles of Narnia into a film, like, I want to say around 2000.
It was 2000.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And I remember...
Yeah, I think it's how everybody felt about the films.
Oh, I don't know. I think there might have been people who really loved them.
Netflix actually bought the Narnia rights, and they're going to make big epic. They're going to make their own movie series.
Kind of cool.
I mean, it's been 20 years, so it's a cycle on Hollywood works on.
Yeah,
I mean, they're already talking about doing a reboot Harry Potter TV series, so it's
But like we've done. Because you are such a big fan, like when we went to York, we did
the Shambles, which is like considered
Harry Potter Street.
It's Harry Potter Street, but it's like one of the inspirations for Diagon Alley. We went to the Harry Potter studio tour.
Yeah. What studios? I can't remember the names.
Warner Brothers Studios in Leavesden.
Yeah.
Which I highly recommend doing, and it's actually still one of
it is cool.
It is like the most popular tourist attraction in London, or it's not even in London, that area, and highly recommend it.
We did one at, was it Paramount too?
Well, it was the Warner Brothers studio tour.
Yeah,
they like had a Harry Potter thing in it because they're like, well, we're Warner Brothers, we gotta have Harry Potter in here somewhere, even though they didn't make the movies in Hollywood at all.
It was neat though. It was.
And then I went to Harry Potter Land at Universal Studios.
Yeah, when we were living in LA.
That was a fun experience because when we were living in LA, I really wanted to go, but like when you would price it out, it was
cost prohibitive.
It was like $300 or $400 for the day for just the four of us to go, and I was like,
just the entrance, right?
Just to get in, and I'm like,
and then you've got food
and we'll talk about this in a sec, but our kids aren't really even into Harry Potter, so like.
No.
So it never really appealed to spend all that money to make all of us go just for my pure entertainment. So, ironically, I got to go from a work related outing. So I was at a conference for work in LA that was nearby, and they rented out the Wizarding World of Harry Potter after hours, so that they could have the event there, and they served food, and they kept all the attractions open and all the rides open for the people who were there. So here I was at 9:00 on a weeknight, going through and doing all the rides, doing the wand experience.
Yeah, home with the wand.
Excited. But what was really
I'm happy that you lingered.
Well,
I'm not being.
I literally experienced it in the best possible way because there were no lines, there was very few people. But what was really amusing about it is these are really high power professionals, really important people in the industry I worked in, and they were just as thrilled and excited as I was to be at Harry Potter Land. It was like it brings out the inner child and the inner just joy of experiencing something completely enjoyable.
Cool.
It was a lot of fun. And unfortunately, I could never really get our kids into Harry Potter.
You tried.
I tried so hard. Our son, he doesn't like imaginative fantasy and stories.
He's very analytical.
He's very analytical. He's very he prefers to look at instruction manuals and mechanical manuals, and he doesn't even like to watch movies.
No,
and he has a hard time with movies.
There's a couple of them though.
There's a couple where he'll watch, and he doesn't watch TV either. So that's not his journey, which is okay. Our daughter, she loves some elements of fantasy. She'll watch Harry Potter with me, but she's not really into it, and I think she made an effort, but it's just
you even bought her the illustrated version.
Yeah, I bought those for me, but
because
we have the illustrated versions, and she might sit down and watch it, but kids interact with media so differently than we did.
Oh, absolutely.
And they don't she'll happily binge a show, but sometimes a movie is too much. And she got really into anime, and so fantasy is not really her thing. So I don't know. I'll have to wait for grandkids to impart the Harry Potter lore.
Kids, yikes!
We're 40.
Yikes! All right, what's next on the list?
Lord of the Rings, your favorite.
This is another fast for me.
I read Lord of the Rings. Around when the movies came out in 2001, started with The Hobbit. So I was, in 2015 or 16.
No, you weren't. In 2001, we met in 2002.
Oh, okay. So I was 16 or 17. And so I came to Lord of the Rings late, but as Jackie will attest, Lord of the Rings is very important to me. Lord of the Rings is big in my life. I do a rewatch of all the films every Christmas, holidays, every Christmas break. I sit in the family den and rewatch all the movies, and those are the mornings she sleeps in.
Hey, I'm not knocking your love of it.
Lord of the Rings is not for her.
And I've seen all the movies. We went to the midnight shows all the movies.
Back when they did midnight shows.
Oh, which just speaks how much I love you.
True love.
Oh, and I watched all the Harry Potter movies with you, too. Midnight showings, It's a lot of midnight movies.
Man, they don't do midnight movies anymore, thankfully.
Well,
with a reason, but
we wouldn't
talk about that on the.
Well, and not only that, what was it? I think it was Judy Lee Curtis last year who was can we normalize having a concert at 5:30 in the evening?
Yeah. If we don't start, if we're gonna watch a movie and we don't start it by 8 p.m., that's a mini series, or it's a multi-night experience.
But there's some other ones here.
Robin Hood.
Yeah.
We grew up with the Kevin Costner Hollywood film.
I loved that movie as a kid. I was probably too young to watch it as I watched it, but loved that movie. So romantic.
We've been to the castle.
Yes, we have, actually. It was very cold the day we went.
It's Old Warder Castle in Wiltshire.
I probably Robin
pronounced it wrong. So
family home, right? Well, it's burnt out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at our list and we didn't do Mog the Cat.
Oh, because I wasn't.
Oh, Mog the Cat is a British. So some of our very dear British friends, when they found out we were having children, said you've got to get the Mog, M-O-G, Mog the Cat books. And I guess they are beloved British classics. And so we had a couple of those, I think. And those, they're just the sweetest little books about the cat being Mog. And we I feel when our kids were really small, when we traveled back and forth to Britain, it was we bought more books for them, even though you could buy them here, but we were just, I guess it was buying the British versions as well, right? So things that had British spellings in them and that kind of thing. And those were just so, like, those make a great baby shower gift. So if you got to buy for somebody, those are really nice gift. Or you could do a couple of the, like, to do Mog, you do Beatrix Potter, you could do a couple of the books. You have to have a shower gift, something unique and fun.
So, why don't we move on to what our kids really like?
Yeah, I kind of did.
Well, our daughter loved Peppa Pig.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, there was a phase where Peppa Pig was pretty much on 24/7 in our house.
Yep.
And I didn't mind. She actually liked a lot of British media, and so I was thrilled.
Like, because we didn't do a lot of the Disney Channel. There used to be I don't know if there's still a channel on cable here in the U.S. called Sprout.
Yeah.
And they imported a lot of
British stuff.
Like, they did Kipper.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So sweet, voiced by Martin Clunes. The sweetest show about a little dog. But Peppa Pig was huge in our house.
Yeah, and
it's like she had the Peppa Pig play set.
We bought all the Peppa Pig books we could buy.
Yeah, see, there's some of the, if you're watching, there's some of the Peppa Pig books here on the table. Like, I had to get ready for our podcast. Like, so when I clear off the bookshelf, the books came off the bookshelf, and then they went into a box. And the box got stored because I emotionally am not ready to let go of those. And I know that there's some that I will keep, but eventually they do need to be donated somewhere where they can, children can enjoy them, so they're not forever in a box. But it's like, oh, look at all the Peppa Pig books. But what's really interesting about that is there are some words that even today she says with a British accent.
Yeah.
We spent time while she was little in England, but not that much. And
No.
and we were not around.
Well, and if she tries, she can do a flawless little British accent.
Yeah.
She's 10 now.
Yeah.
But she can nail a British accent without even trying.
Yeah. Like, if you ask her to say the word costume, it's costume.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
And I remember back during the pandemic, there was a study done that said that, or not a study, there was an article out that said that because kids weren't interacting with other kids and they were watching Peppa Pig so much that children were starting to develop spontaneous British accents, which I think is hilarious.
It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all
There's
good.
worse things to go through life with than a British accent, right?
Yeah, British accent is lovely.
I know, it's great.
So what's left?
Oh, she really likes Bluey, which is like
that's like a new one.
yeah, I didn't even know what that was.
I thought it was a Disney Channel thing.
It's on Disney Plus.
Well, I thought it was like a Disney.
No.
It might actually be a Disney thing. I don't know, but
she watches it even though she's kind of she's aged out of it. And,
well, I guess it's like this cultural phenomena.
yeah.
Like,
Kids these days.
everybody got excited when the aunt got pregnant because I guess they talked about infertility issues, which okay, that's, I don't know. I can see its appeal. It looks very sweet. I've never actually sat and watched it though. But I know of people who
We don't have to do that anymore.
well, friends of ours who use children are much, much smaller, like Bluey is on 24/7. Like, it is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, let's start to wrap it up. Why don't we talk about what's a bit of children's literature that you really didn't like?
That I didn't?
Or that like upset you, or you're like, I'm not going to read that one.
If I had anything that, like, I was completely like, nope. I mean, I just had things that I didn't get into that just didn't pique my interest.
Like, I didn't get into Thomas the Tank Engine.
Oh my God. How did we... Now, our son...
He loved Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yes.
But that Thomas the Tank Engine is different than the one we grew up with.
Yes. Which need to clarify.
Yeah.
There's different Thomas, like, the
Yeah.
American version and then...
Well, the one we grew up with, like, they would take the British version and they would wrap it with Shiny Time Station with Alec Baldwin, or even George Carlin was a...
Yeah,
that was...
Doctor.
Like, looking back now, like, George Carlin? Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I always, like, maybe I was older than Thomas the Tank Engine when it hit popularity in the 90s, but like I always thought, no, I don't like that.
No, I watched it because it was on PBS.
But I didn't watch CBS because I had cable.
I watched a lot.
See, we had this divide. We have cultural references that each other don't understand. Like I'll talk about Nickelodeon shows, and she's just like, "Whoop."
Yeah, I didn't do Nickelodeon. A lot of PBS.
But I just never really got a time to. Which I am the target audience for Thomas the Tank Engine. I love trains so much.
We were kind of into it when I was little because like the Isle of Sodor, and it's very.
Well, I learned what it was, and I learned the inspiration of it, that it's based on the Isle of Wight. Now I'm like, I really wish I had been more in Thomas the Tank Engine when I was growing up.
But I feel like Thomas the Tank Engine as well is one of those kind of universal or globally exported.
Yeah.
Like, everybody will just about, I should not say everybody, but just about in most places on the corner of the globe, you will, like, if you pulled out that blue little Tank Engine, you're like, what is this?
I really wish I had been into Narnia when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because as being into Tolkien.
Yeah, totally fits.
Tolkien and Lewis were friends. Like, I've been to the Eagle and Child pub in Oxford. Like,
hence the Oxford tea.
They, like, I feel like, and we went and saw the play, Freud's Last Session, which C.S. Lewis is in, which we need to watch the movie. Yeah. And I feel like I kind of missed out not being into C.S. Lewis because he's kind of the corollary to Tolkien. He's like the opposite of Tolkien, and people consider him more accessible than Tolkien because Tolkien is dense, and I mean, look at Lord of the Rings; it's 1,000 pages. But I kind of wish I had been into Narnia growing up, and I mean, what's to stop me from doing it now?
They're great books. I mean, I feel like they're very digestible. I mean, I was never a huge like fantasy fan. I mean, I read them in my early, to mid-teen years because it was just kind of the thing to do in the, in the culture that I was in. And so, I read all of them, and I enjoyed them, but I'm not, as a whole, no, I'm not a huge fantasy fan. I think we established that on the last podcast, right?
Yeah.
I read them and they were enjoyable.
What's interesting is things influence you don't even realize it. All this British culture influenced me growing up, which led to my loving all things British. When I went to university, I studied English literature. Always gravitated towards it. So.
Well, I think it's interesting too how much of it was just naturally part of our childhoods.
Yeah.
Right? And then as Anglophiles, how much of it there was like that baseline, and then we brought more into our children's lives because, British friends and even Anglotopia readers, like, oh, you gotta get this book or that, like, there have just been so many great, and they're great American, we're not.
I mean, Dr. Seuss was a huge part of both our childhoods.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. That's that's bread and butter.
We're going to do another hard podcast on American children's literature.
Oh, for sure.
Well, that's not what this podcast is about.
No,
but yeah, I think that, like you said, and I realized this when I wrote my book Adventures in Anglotopia, is that British culture is everywhere.
Yes, it is.
In American culture.
From a very
young age. And nobody is like conspiring to put this there. It's just the stuff that's come over and been published here and gotten popular. And if it didn't get popular, it wouldn't be here. And so those stories have just resonated with generation after generation. And I think they'll continue to. And then there will be new imports, and like Bluey's the latest, craze.
But I think Bluey is kind of an offshoot to this conversation. And I am I don't know if it started from a book.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. And I just kind of wonder what will be next, what will hit the zeitgeist next, what will be the next Harry Potter, what will be the next Peppa Pig.
I think it will be something in the fantasy genre, because like somewhere in there, because it's so popular.
Well, and
easily marketable.
And young adult literature is crazy popular right now, not just with young adults, but with actual adults. And there's this desire for young adult fantasy in the marketplace, and there are lots of great writers working in that realm now.
Yeah, but
hopefully me one day.
Yeah. But children's literature. Our topic is children's. British children's.
YA and children's literature overlap. I mean, would you consider Harry Potter children's literature or young adult literature?
The early ones I consider children's literature, but as they get further on in the story, the subject.
Well, as the books get thicker and thicker and thicker.
But I mean, look at Roald Dahl, right? Like some of the subject matter in those books are.
And that's an interesting topic. Yeah. There is that there's this, there's a movement where people really want children's books to be sanitized and not have anything horrible in them. But kids love the horrible elements in Roald Dahl books. I mean,
who was your favorite, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Matilda? Like, who was your favorite? The Trunchbull was the best.
Yeah. Like who doesn't want to sit there and eat a whole cake?
You couldn't wait to see, Matilda.
Yeah, the bad guys get it at the end,
Exactly. That sense that children can inflict justice or kind of right the course, right, for adults who had lost their way. I mean, I think that's what makes the Roald Dahl books they're timeless.
Yeah. They don't hesitate to show you that there can be bad things in life, but also that you can triumph over them.
Well, and that there can be bad adults.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody's a good person.
Yeah.
So, but on that note, we should probably wrap up.
So, let us know in the comments what your favorite British childhood stories were, what resonates with you, what's resonated with your own children if you have any, what's your guilty pleasure that you still watch as a grown adult,
Or did we miss something massive?
Yeah, I'm sure we did.
I am 100% certain we did.
These things are always about what we left out, not what we put in.
Well, I mean, it's only podcast is, roughly an hour. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're already clocking at 15 minutes or so here, so we should probably. That's a long time to listen to us, Nander.
All right, so with that being said, thank you for
listening.
Thank you for watching.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Talk to you.